All right, how's it going, everyone? So we're back today. We're going to be talking about The Last Airbender. So this is M. Night Shyamalan's live-action adaptation of the last Avatar, The Last Airbender cartoon. So just a quick few notes. Might look a little different because I forgot I helped a local store out with filming some stuff, and I forgot my tripod there. So it's going to look a little bit weird. Top of my head is cut off, but that's okay. So a few things I want to talk about before we dive into it. First off, I could say this movie is just trash and just absolutely terrible. Don't waste your time with it. And I'm pretty sure nobody would contest that. Maybe a few people to troll, but like honestly, even if you didn't take the source material into account, it's just not a great movie. So that being said, that's our bluff. That's the bottom line up front. This movie's not good. But we're not just going to end it there. We're going to talk some more about it. So a few more admin notes as far as like this movie and the further plans. So right at the beginning of the movie, just like the show does, it opens up with Book 1, Water. And spoiler alerts for the show, obviously, because it's heavily, well, I don't even know if I could say heavily based on it because of how much is different. But obviously it is an adaptation of the show, so there's going to be spoilers. This movie's not good, so I don't feel bad about spoiling it. Or like I don't feel the need to do a non-spoiler and spoiler, like, you know, cut it in half type things. So we're just going to lay it all on the table. So that being said, spoiler alert. But if you haven't seen this movie, I mean, you probably don't want to unless you just want to experience it like I did. So, you know, like I said before, it opens up with Book 1 and then just like all the episodes do. So the original intention was to make this a trilogy movie series. Just like the show had 3 seasons, it was supposed to mirror that. But with how badly this movie flopped and just did not perform at the box office, they killed those plans, which it really isn't surprising. So one of the first things I want to talk about with why this movie is so bad is it really just takes a dump on the source material. A lot of people, fans of the original show, will crap on this movie because of how like whitewashed it is. So the cartoon is clearly based. The characters are supposed to be Asian, or you know, I'm not sure what the ethnicity. Like the North and South Pole tribes, the water tribes, they're supposed to be like Eskimos or whatever. Like they're based on certain things, and that's just not reflected in these movies. Like major things like. I think the casting was kind of funky. The kid that plays Aang, he's just some kid from Texas who had never had an acting job before this. If you look up his IMDb profile, he has 3 things listed, and 2 of them are Avatar. One of them is the video game for the Wii. So like the casting was just not great. The actress they got to play Katara, she's just, I don't know why. The casting is just bad. Okay, as far as like honoring the source material, it's just really, really bad. The kid that plays Zuko is like completely different ethnicity. Like he's, I read somewhere that the Fire Nation was supposed to be like the Chinese culture and ethnicity, and that is not at all what is any of those guys at all. So. The show gets heavily criticized for like being like swapping out the races and all that kind of stuff, which we'll actually go more in depth on a conversation of does the source material matter. It's a video I'm going to do a collab with your boy JC. He made an appearance on the channel before. We talked about The Mandalorian. This time we're going to have more of a just discussion / not really debate, because I don't think it will be a debate, but just more of like a discussion video on does the source material matter, and should it affect your views on the final product. But we'll get into that later. That should be releasing on Friday. My intention is to release this video on Wednesday, which is the Wednesday following my Avatar review. So getting more back on track. So the casting is bad. M. Night Shyamalan decided he wanted to change the pronunciations of most of the characters' names, and from what I could find, the trivia section of IMDb is really fun. You can go in there, and whether or not it's true kind of just depends. They never cite their sources or anything like that, so take it with a grain of salt, but that's my source for this. But apparently he said he changed the pronunciations to honor like Asian pronunciations or whatever. So it's kind of weird how he wanted to honor that, but didn't honor the source material by casting people accurate to the character. So I know just all the liberties, you know, he took with just the movie in general, from like the differences that he made from the show. I know that was heavily criticized, and that's a big part of why people don't like the movie, because it's just a bad adaptation. So another one of the critical things I thought was really dumb was they decided to change how firebenders work. So in the show, they just produce their own fire. Like they throw a punch and it just produces fire, whatever. Kicks, whatever. They just produce their own fire. In this movie, however, firebenders can only firebend if there's existing fire. So they have to take fire from a source and then they can manipulate it. Kind of like Pyro from the Brotherhood, if you're familiar with the X-Men characters. Why is that stupid? Well, how did they wage an entire war and do all this craziness if they're fighting waterbenders on their territory? Like, if they need existing fire, why wouldn't the water tribe just like put out the fire? Or same thing with, to an extent, the air tribe, the air nomads, that is, and the earthbenders. Like, they would just, why wouldn't they just stomp out the fire? I think that was a really dumb change, and they really go out of their way to show that as well, because there's a scene where Uncle Iroh, he creates his own fire because he's kind of cheesed off at something somebody else did, and everybody makes a huge deal out of it. They're like, oh my gosh, he's creating his own fire. So it's not one of those things that's implied. It is very well stated throughout the movie. Let's see, more of the adaptation stuff. I hated the way the mask they chose for the Blue Ghost. For those of you that maybe aren't familiar, the Blue Ghost is the identity that Zuko used to break Aang out of prison when another fire dude tried to capture him and take him to the king or whatever. So that's another thing. We don't see, in the show, we don't directly see Fire Lord Ozai until season 3. It's always from like the side or the rear, and he doesn't really talk a lot, and it's very like short like memory snippets of like how he's shown. And then, like I said, he's not actually shown as a character until season 3. And in this movie, he's all over the movie. I think within the first 20 minutes you see him at least twice. So it's kind of ridiculous. I mean, it's supposed to be one of those slow build-up things because he's supposed to be this big menacing villain, and they just overuse him. And again, the casting is just not good for what they're supposed to be. And if that annoys you, that I'm highly critical of casting, then you're gonna hate my my Marvel and DC. Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, my Marvel and DC, but mostly Marvel videos, because I'm gonna heavily criticize a lot of those castings as well. So what else? So the main issue. So that's all like the outside stuff. So if like you had not prior knowledge of Avatar and you went into the movie, no. So now if you're just watching the movie, it's still a bad movie. It's very slow. The dialogue is just really kind of cringy, cringier than season 1 of the actual show. As a matter of fact, it's just not great. The movie itself is really slow. They go out of their way to like show off the flashiest moves in martial arts to kind of like justify tying it to like the bending. Like in the show, it was already kind of a stretch. Like, yeah, they're doing a bunch of extra steps just to spin something or whatever. But in this movie, it's like dialed up a ton. It's crazy. I thought they did a terrible job animating Appa, Aang's flying bison. It almost looks like it has a human face, which is it just looked kind of freaky. I didn't care for that at all. They tried, so if you watched my Avatar review, like the show video, I've mentioned a couple of times how there was like filler episodes, and the ones that they chose to try to incorporate into this movie, I thought they did a very poor job of doing so. One of them was in season 1, they find earthbenders that they're forbidden from earthbending, and if they're caught, they're taken to like a metal ship in the middle of nowhere to work on coal or something like that. They loosely tried to adapt that in this movie. They find earthbenders and they're like oppressed by the Fire Nation or whatever like that. And instead of just being like shipped somewhere else, they're like enslaved in their own home. So Aang shows up and it's like, what are you doing? You're standing on Earth, just earthbend. And everybody's like, no, we can't. It's just like, it's so dumb. And that's really, I think if you're going to adapt filler, at least try to do it accurately and so that it doesn't derail from the main story. But again, that's filler's purpose, is to derail the main story so that the manga has time to develop so that you can make animation out of it. So again, my criticism of Avatar was having too much filler. Some of it's good, some of it's bad, but it doesn't work in a movie format. You shouldn't be including filler unless it's very short or it serves a very direct purpose. Like if they did end up doing a third movie, the Book of Fire, and they wanted to throw in that Sokka is going off to do his own journey to create a sword or whatever out of meteorite, like cool, you don't have to show that on screen, but you can allude to it and bring him back later in the movie, like 20, 30 minutes later in the movie. That would be totally fine. That's like a great way to do that. Instead, they just tried to adapt, like I think it was like 4 episodes, maybe it was like 2 or 3 episodes of filler into like a 20-minute scene, and it was just I thought it was bad. I thought it was a bad idea, and it was executed poorly, in my opinion. So I think that's pretty much it. I think this, again, has to do with directors having, how do I word this right? Because this is one of my major issues with the Marvel movies, and DC especially, more so than Marvel almost. But I think they're giving directors too much free reign with adaptations, if you want to call them that. Because, I mean, there's a certain point when you're adapting source material, and there's a point where you're taking an idea and just creating your own thing out of it. And I think that's what a lot of the Marvel movies are, is they just take the idea of a story, and they just like shift it, change it, and shuffle it around, and just take out stuff and add stuff in just to create their own thing, to make their mark or whatever. I think that's the stupidest thing ever. But I think that's what it really boils down to with this movie is M. Night tried to do kind of too much with it. Now, some reports and some articles will say that it was largely the studio pushing on him, and he eventually just gave up and said, whatever, you will just do your ideas. I don't know how accurate that is. Again, the trivia section of IMDb has a lot of like little tidbits that are just kind of interesting, whether or not they're true. So I think that's pretty much it. The only thing I really wanted to point out with the casting was the guy that plays Sokka. Sokka's character in this movie is just trash. He's so bad. In the show, he's comedic relief. He's funny. He just says a bunch of stupid one-liners, basically just like dad jokes and stuff like that. But they casted this dude who plays, I believe, Jasper in the Twilight series, and it was around the same time that I think the second or third movie came out. I think it was in like 2010 or something like that. Yeah, wow, is he really 10 years old? I don't know. I got to double check that. But he was just bad. I don't know if it was because he had like so much time playing Jasper or whatever, but he just looked way too serious. The time they give him to say jokes, he says it with such a serious face. It's like, okay, I don't think this guy's actually joking. Like, it's just his casting in particular really stood out to me as being just bad, and especially the writing for his character is just really, really bad. And I don't know if that's anything against him as an actor. I don't really recall seeing him in many other things other than, again, the Twilight series. And I mean, how hard is it to act stone cold and like just mopey? So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, he might be a great actor in some other stuff. He may have, made some really good movies or whatever. But in this particular case, he was a terrible casting. He did an awful job. The kid that played Aang, he reeked of inexperience. He only got the role, I believe, because he sent in a video of him doing martial arts, and they're like, yeah, that looks good. And it's like, oh, okay, is that all it takes? So I think that was really bad too. But then again, how many kids out there, especially like child actors or whatever, just know kung fu and can look good doing it? But then again, a lot of actors don't actually practice martial arts. They just practice for a role. So I don't know. It's just one of those weird things. Again, overall, the casting was just not good. I'm going to keep beating that like a dead horse because it was a big deal. A good cast can make a decent movie good, right? I think I said that right. Yeah, a good cast can make a decent movie good, but a bad cast can make a bad movie even worse. So that's going to wrap it up. Again, this movie's just bad as a movie, and then if you know source material, it's just really bad. They don't do it a lot of justice, and the fact that they really thought they were going to make 3 movies, or 2 more after this one, is just kind of oof. Real quick, real tidbit trivia. So they actually couldn't call this movie Avatar: The Last Airbender because James Cameron had already gotten the copyright for Avatar. So that's why the movie is called The Last Airbender. Whether or not that's true, I don't know. Again, that's coming from the trivia section. But if it is true, I mean, that's kind of funny. I mean, I think that's pretty cool. just a little tidbit of information. So for the last time, that's going to wrap it up. I think that I hit everything I want to. I don't encourage you to watch this movie unless you really want to. I will never tell you not to watch a movie, but I don't encourage it. It's pretty boring. It took me 2 nights to watch because I got bored of it. So that's going to wrap it up. The next video, as I've said earlier, is going to be a collab with your boy JC. And we're going to be talking about, does the source material matter? We're going to be talking about Marvel, DC, Star Wars, and I guess we'll use Avatar as an example. I'm sure that'll come up. And I'm super excited to record that. I don't know how long that video is going to be, but if it is a long one, I hope you will still tune in and check it out, because I'm going to put a lot of effort into it. I'm actually going to go write down some talking points right now, and then we're going to film here pretty shortly. So again, thank you so much if you've been checking out these videos, and thank you so much if you've been supporting me and all that good stuff. If you want to talk about this movie, maybe you thought it was good, or maybe you think that it has better things to it that I didn't see, please leave a comment, hit me up on social media. You can hit up my business email. Just feel free to reach out, and we'll have a conversation. And until next time, see ya.